Hey guys, welcome back to CLOWNFISH TV. This is Neon. I'm here with special guest Peter Simieti from Alterna Comics.
Hey Neon, how's it going? Everybody in the chat?
It's going very well. Everybody's like, "Why aren't you starting yet?" And I'm like, I had to make sure that we could actually hear Peter because we've had people on before, and for some reason the program OBS doesn't pick up the audio from people calling in, which is no good. So we wanted to make sure we could hear Peter. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in and joining us this evening. And we're going to play catch-up because we actually haven't had Peter on in quite a while. And there's a lot going on with Alterna Comics and a lot going on with the comic book industry in general. We've done a couple of videos here and there, but I haven't really been on top of it as much as usual because we've been traveling so much. So I'm going to let Peter introduce himself or reintroduce himself, talk a little bit about Alterna, and talk about what they're doing.
Hey everybody, I'm Peter Simieti, founder and publisher of Alterna Comics, and right now we've got something pretty interesting going on. We are expanding, and with that expansion, we're doing an Indiegogo to support it, so we can have nice, healthy, and steady growth. We've kind of taken off very quickly over the past year. 2017 was our best year ever, and then 2018 came along, and that was our best year ever. And now 2019 has come along, and it's eclipsing 2018 so far in a very, very big way. And it's only almost April. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So with the expansion, we're doing more books, we're doing bigger print runs. So we're running out of space. So we are physically expanding, but we're also expanding in other ways. And we'll talk about that throughout the show.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to, it's always good to hear from you, Peter, because, we always have these like doom and gloom stories about the comic book industry and how, especially indie publishers, how they're struggling these days. And you guys are actually, you've got the opposite problem. You're sort of blowing up.
Yeah, and it's a good problem to have, but it is still a problem that we need to find a solution for. And luckily so, we've managed to find a solution with this. So right now, if anyone goes to Indiegogo and you go to Alterna Comics and you can see what we've got up on there, we've reached our initial goal. We've reached the first stretch goal, and now we're on to our second stretch goal. So we're about, I think, 2,400 or so away from an $8,000 stretch goal. It was a short campaign, just 2 weeks to get something in there and something that we can utilize all the money effectively in as quick as possible a manner, because like I said, we are expanding in such a fast way. And I'm finding that we're going back to print multiple times because right now we're in a setup where we can't have too many extras. I'm ordering like 500-600 extra copies, and we're going out of them in 2 or 3 months. And so I have to start ordering more, but we have so many issues and so many titles that space is getting eaten up quickly. So it's making us having to go back to print, and we're it's kind of not cost effective to keep going back to print. You want to have a bigger initial print run. So that's what we're doing with this, and it's going to also set us up in a bigger space so we could eventually one day do something that we've been wanting to do for years now, which is to start Alterna distribution.
Okay, that's awesome. So yeah, how many titles are you publishing now, Peter?
Let's see. Right now, between single issues, current active series, it's close to 30, and then including with graphic novels, I'd say, if you add those in, 40 or so around there. Between all the issues, we're pushing around 100 at this point. And then by the end of the year, we're adding more titles too. So we're going to have probably 5 or 6 more new titles, more issues on top of that. And then next year, we've got like half of our lineup already filled in too. So it's kind of, it's daunting to look at the space that we currently have, which is a 5x10 warehousing storage space, and go, this thing is getting eaten up really quick, especially when we start putting in overstock for Alternaween and different events like that, where we try to get comics out there and inject them into the community in a big way and get new readers on board. We don't have the space, so it's getting eaten up, and it's crazy. It's great though to see that we're growing, because we've been around for 13 years. So to see that, there's we're not hitting a plateau. We're not in decline after 13 years. We're actually just shooting through the roof. And this is something that's going to allow us to support healthy growth. Because as we all know, if you grow too quick, that's just as bad as not growing at all.
Yeah. Okay, so Roberts asks, what would Alterna distribution look like?
Yeah, so basically right now, we've been kind of doing distribution more or less directly to readers and retailers for about 2 years. it started off, especially with retailers, maybe about 10 to 12, and now we distribute to about 60 different retailers. And I'd say there's close to about 250 comic shops that regularly order indie books, or what we would all define really as indie books. I don't mean anything in the top 10. I mean, you know, all the other dudes, kind of like Alterna. And if we can get, you know, more growth with that, which I believe we will, there's no reason for it, because retailers are loving it. They keep talking to other retailers, and every single month I'm noticing we're adding 3 to 5 every month. It'd be very interesting within a year or two, let's say, because the industry, as we all know, is declining in a way because of a lot of different factors. To have alternative distribution there, we can actually utilize what we've been doing the whole time and just get other comic creators and publishers on board too. So let's say if you've got a Kickstarter, an Indiegogo, if you're printing out books and you've got no distribution, because let's say you do short runs, so it doesn't really make sense. You can also utilize the printing partnership program we have to get your costs pretty low for printing, and then do distribution with us. So then we'll have this whole system where you can get out to stores, you can get out to readers that don't have local comic shops, all this kind of stuff that's relatively easier to do when we're all together. And then it all draws people to one spot where they can quickly and effectively go, hey, go to this place, they have our books. And you get a bunch of people doing that at the same time. We've already experienced a tremendous amount of growth from that kind of thing. And that's just us with our books. So if we got 20, 30, 50 other titles in there, there's a lot more growth, and it just becomes exponential. And this is allowing us to take the first steps towards doing that.
That's awesome. Brittany Dodson wants to know, how goes the dollar store distribution?
Oh, maybe she's referring to what happened with Dollar General.
Yeah.
Dollar General was absolutely interested. Now, this is what happened, and this was what was really weird. I don't know if anybody actually follows the magazine industry or anything like that, but Ingram used to be a big distributor of periodicals, and they got absorbed or bought out into TNG, which now turned into ANC. It's basically what's happening in the magazine industry is what happened to the comics industry, which basically gave Diamond sole distribution rights for comics into comic shops. It's dwindling down further and further into a singular distributor for magazines, which has become very bad for everyone, of course. As we can all see, and we all know in comics, that's become a very, one of the big points of why things are going as bad as they are. So the one distributor that was interested in having us distributed through to Dollar General when they had their contacts going, now they're gone. Those people that were in charge of that deal are gone. And now it's 2 steps away from that. And they have a whole different game plan for what they want to do with stores and getting certain items into stores. They're actually downsizing many different periodicals and magazines now into various stores like a Dollar General. So while the store itself is interested, and I'm still going to see if I can pursue some kind of direct deal with them, most likely I won't be able to because of the way distribution partnerships work and things like that. They don't want you to step on toes and going over their distributors to make a deal. So, we probably won't be able to do something like that. But I'm still in talks with about 3 other national chains right now, but it takes a long time to review product with places like that.
Yeah, I imagine that's a lot, a lot to deal with. But I mean, the thing that I admire about what you guys are doing over there is that Diamond has sort of become a closed door, I think, for a lot of small press. I mean, it seems like their threshold now is much higher than it used to be, right?
In a way, yes, but in a way, no. And what I mean by that is that because so many stores have gone, unfortunately, under, their threshold has become a bit cloudy. I haven't heard Diamond talk about a sales threshold, at least not an accurately definable one. I'd say since like 2011, 2012.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the thing is that at the time, what it was a $2,500 mark, and at the time there was like 3,400 stores, and now there's about 2,000, maybe a little less. And I know their website still says there's 4,000, but there isn't. There definitely is not 4,000 comic shops. And then especially if you want to then talk about dedicated comic shops where there's the majority of what's sold is comics, especially new comics, I think we're probably talking about closer to 14 to 1,500 stores then at that point. But yeah, we haven't heard specific threshold talk from Diamond in a while, though they have been mentioning, and obviously I think it's because of the fact that the market's declining a bit.
Yeah.
They have been mentioning about, if a book is a low performing book, it might get canceled. If a book has creators on it that don't have a very solid sales history, their new books might be canceled. But that's kind of always been the talk that Diamond rolls around whenever things get like this. And if anything, to me, I look at that and I go, okay, well then we're looking at possibly every single indie publisher getting canceled out.
Right.
If they were to effectively want to put their thresholds in place, they're already losing, market share because of the fact that DC has been lowering their titles. And then if IDW, if something happens with them where they completely fold, I don't think Diamond can necessarily afford at that point to then say, okay, well, 50 publishers go bye-bye. And then at that point, if they do, this is another reason why I want to put ourselves in a better place and have that alternative distribution set up in a year or so. But right now, I think it would be kind of interesting to see how things play out. And I'm feeling pretty sad for the folks that are working at not only IDW that don't know what's going on right now, because they're either going to fold or restructure, but even the comic shops that depend on that revenue. So it's a multifaceted problem, and it's not necessarily a time like some people would think I might be gloating about something like that, but I'm not going to gloat about the failure, or the hard times of any particular publisher, especially because there's always good people that work everywhere. Even at Diamond, I've had experiences with a lot of people who work for Diamond that have been great, wonderful people. It's not their fault for the fault of a company's policy or the way things have taken a downturn in some cases. So yeah, I hope whatever happens, I hope they figure it out.
Yeah. Now, Roberts was asking again. He wanted to know if someone would use your, he calls it vanity publishing distribution. Would it be branded Alterna or would it be branded whoever was publishing?
Oh no, it absolutely, yeah. If they went through the distribution, it would not be branded whatsoever with an Alterna logo. It wouldn't be published by Alterna. It would be a distributed product. So basically, all it would just be an aggregate retailer / distributor. And distributor meaning basically that they get to utilize our contacts with retailers. So they get to tell people, you can go to these stores and talk to your retailer because they can order them from Alternative Distribution. They can talk to those retailers directly because we would have a list of those stores available, like similar to what's on alternacomics.com/retailers, or in the back of every issue. We've got a store directory on the back of every issue. So it'd be something similar to this where they could see, okay, these are the stores that we work with. These are the stores we deal with. And then we can talk to them and we can tell people, okay, these are the stores that you guys can talk to as well. But no, it definitely wouldn't have any kind of Alterna logo or anything like that.
Okay. So sort of like almost like I guess a CreateSpace sort of deal where you produce the content, but they handle the printing and the distribution.
Yeah, it could be something like that, especially if they wanted to utilize the printing partnership program. But in many cases, people can easily, like let's say they don't want to do, because we print on newsprint, for those that don't know. I'll show the comic again too, because many people might not be aware, but newsprint absolutely can look spectacular, especially with modern coloring. I know a lot of people don't think that could be possible, but this book here is Feast or Famine. This is issue number 3, comes out next week. And if you did the printing partnership program with us, you can utilize that to get 50 cents per unit on a 32-page color book, 500 minimum of the order, which is very, very different from a print-on-demand scale, which a lot of people use that, and it costs sometimes, $3 or so a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this, let's say someone goes through a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or whatever, or they just have books already that they printed years ago and they want to have us list it. They can have us do that, and they could sell to readers and retailers, and all that would happen for the retailers is they would get a code so they get their percentage off. There isn't anything overly complicated. There isn't anything that makes it just, putting people through, hurdles to order stuff. We found that that's pretty much been the easiest way for us, and it's been a way that's been working.
Okay, cool. Now we talked a little bit about IDW actually before we went live, and I guess it's kind of shocking to see it spelled out in black and white in on Newsarama and some other websites. But the company is not doing well. They're not doing well at all. And do you think? Now I used to work for IDW. I used to do freelance for them, and there are some good people over there. And do you think the industry could absorb a hit of even a publisher the size of IDW going under?
Yeah, I think they could. I think the industry could absorb that hit if they take it as an opportunity to diversify with the other product out there. Because if anything, right now, there's upwards of 1,000 comics being released every single month. So there's more than enough product. If anything, many people would say there's too much product, especially for where it's going. We don't have product going all over, into every single store. This is mostly just going to comic shops, especially through Diamond. So I don't think it's necessarily that the industry will hurt so much if IDW or someone of a similar size were to go under, as it is that if retailers were really just depending on IDW and they don't think that, I can utilize this shelf space to then put more of, X, Y, and Z publisher or these couple of titles or whatever it is, I think then that's when we'll notice a big downturn as far as the industry goes. But hopefully, retailers go, okay, well, if that occurs, well, we'll order more of, an Alterna or a Boom or a Dynamite, we'll order and we'll maybe one of the ones we wouldn't have ordered, maybe we'll pick up an issue or two of that and we'll utilize that shelf space. But yeah, I hope it doesn't come to the fact that IDW has to do something like fold. But even in that case, too, the licenses that they have for most of their comics, I think those would just end up going to some other publisher that would pick those up.
Yeah, that's, we had some people comment on a video I posted last night about IDW, and they were all upset about, Ninja Turtles and Sonic. And I'm like, they would be fine. I mean, they would go somewhere else. They might even take the same creatives with them. Sonic's been through multiple publishers. Turtles have been through multiple publishers. And, that's kind of, I think what's led IDW to where they are now, personally, is the fact that they haven't invested in their own IP. They've been chasing licenses, and now they want to sell this company for, millions of dollars, and there's really nothing to sell,
Yeah. That definitely has been a problem. Before we were talking live, I had mentioned about 30 Days of Night. And that was a big deal at IDW. And it seemed like they kind of took that direction, and instead of going down that road and pushing it further, they utilized the exposure they got to get licenses, and then kind of maybe had some success early on with that. But then now at this point, they become mostly known as a licensing publisher. And once you put yourself in that position, it just turns into, well, anyone can get licenses. It just depends how deep your pockets are. And as we've seen with them, I mean, even getting top 5 stature as a publisher in the comic industry, it still didn't make them bulletproof from getting hurt, even though they had really great licenses that I'm sure people would love to have and love to see do well. For one reason or another, they didn't. And people asked me today too if Alterna would ever consider doing licenses like that, and for so many reasons I would not. First and foremost, it pretty much goes against everything Alterna stands for, because we want to put out original creator-owned content. And then second of all, there's so many different obstacles in place with licensing. The fees involved, the marketing that you'd have to do, because the licensors want to then see that it's being marketed properly. And then the fact, too, that many of them will either give you too short of a leash, so it stifles your creativity, or they'll give you too long of a leash and expect you to do something so different with the title that it ends up turning off the core fan base, which is what you need for a licensed title to survive. So it just, there's no real right way to do a licensed comic in this day and age. It just seems like, the best solution would be for the licensor to say, hey, as long as you stay true to the core characterization and the iconic nature of these franchises, then just do some new stories with them. And that kind of seems like that's how licensed comics used to be.
Yeah.
But then they started going away from that.
Yeah, usually, even now you look at, like Transformers and G.I. Joe, back in the day with Marvel, and there was, a lot of common ground between the comics and the TV show. Now that, with G.I. Joe, like the TV show was obviously more sci-fi, but like the characters were basically themselves, between the comics and the show. And same with Transformers, they had different storylines, but they didn't deviate too far from that. Even when, Archie was doing Ninja Turtles, it didn't deviate from the cartoon show. Now it just seems like so many of these licensees want to put their own personal spin on it. I'm like, well, in that case, just make your own comic at that point, because you've already, we've been reviewing the Rainbow Bright comic from Dynamite, and it's shocking, especially the last issue we just read. We haven't put that review up yet, but how far they've deviated from the source material to the point where it doesn't even feel like that property anymore. I'm like, at that point, just create a new magical girl comic. You would probably sell just as many copies. You're only selling like 3,000 or 4,000 copies a month anyway. So why use the name? Why pay for the license? Yeah,
and if anything too, I think a lot of the time, readers feel like they got a bait and switch. They're getting all excited about a property that got picked up, let's say, for licensing, like a Rainbow Bright. And some of the art, if I'm remembering correctly, was very true to the original art of Rainbow Bright. I think it was like a variant cover or something else that was promoted.
Yeah,
and it looked relatively true to it. And then it really, really wasn't in art and character and everything else. And then, if you're surprised when it does bad, I don't really know how you could be. But that's the risk you take sometime. And I'm a strong believer that any kind of comic you make, as long as you market it effectively and to the right people, you could find an audience for it. But with licensed properties, it's very difficult. And why do that? Why put yourself in a situation where you have this great fan base that already exists? Just honor what they love, honor the thing that made this thing worthy of a license, and why you would pay for a license is because of the fact that it's been around. It's a well-known brand, and people already are familiar with these characters. So why do that work to strip away all of that built-in equity? I don't understand that, but it is a popular thing to do nowadays. But it's not working.
No, it's clearly not working, because at that point you don't have any fans really, because you've alienated the core fandom.
Yeah, you're starting back at zero, so it's weird.
So just start over. Just start with something new. It's better to start at zero than it is to start at a negative with a pissed off fan base.
Yeah, and I don't know if they think they can utilize the buzz from the angry fans, but
I think that's very 2016. I think we're past that. I think now the shock value of doing something drastic with an established IP. I think it's now that the companies are seeing that the money's not there. It's time. You look at Transformers. The last movie, Bumblebee, freaking, I loved it. We just watched it the other night. I'm like, if they had done this the first time. The G1 Transformers the first time, set the 80s the first time, you would not have had the backlash I think that a lot of people had, toward those Michael Bay movies. But it just took them 10 years to figure it out, declining box office.
And it's a shame too, because looking at least domestically, that movie was on par with what the last Transformers movie made, and is probably because of the fact that people didn't really enjoy that one too much, and weren't really expecting too much of this Bumblebee movie. Yeah. But hopefully it has some long legs and a good shelf life, and they get another one going.
Yeah. Well, last we heard they're going to do a sequel to Last Night. So I don't, because that makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. But hey, to bring this back around to comics, we had a question a while ago from Jason Green. He says, Peter, do you think there's a way to turn the comics industry around while bringing the fans back? He said Comicsgate is helping to do that, but is there more that can be done?
Boy, oh boy. That's a tough one. in indie comics, and I've stressed this on this show and on my own multiple times as well, and pretty much everywhere. I think indie is growing. I think indie is the way to be at this point. I think carving your own path. For those that aren't familiar with me, I didn't start at the big two or Image or Dark Horse or anywhere. Honestly, I carved out my own path, and it was mostly because when I got started back in like 2005, 2006. I didn't really like what was kind of going on then. That's always just so funny right now about some people that expect me to kind of shift things and to become a little bit more closer towards the mainstream, I guess, the mainstream attitude of comics. And I'm like, I've never had the mainstream attitude of comics. That's why I made my whole company. It's literally even called Alterna because it's an alternative to the mainstream. In almost every kind of way. So, I've survived for so long because when the industry zigs, I zag every single time. They put out $5 comics, we put out $1.50 comics. They want to do just single issues and write for the trade. We just go straight to the trade. And that's what we did for 10 years. And then when that market became flooded, which it's becoming now, and I think a lot of publishers that are banking on that space as the book industry declines very sharply. They think the comic industry is on decline. Wait till they see in 5 years what the book industry looks like. But and then they go, well, what about libraries and what about all these other places? Yeah, well, what about them? They have really tight budgets and they have a lot of things to stock. Graphic novels are not on their number one list of the big budget of a library. So they're banking on all these different things, and they go, oh, what about Amazon? Okay, well, if you're going to just go Amazon, you're going to kill off all the comic shops. And then at that same point in time, you might as well just sell direct because it's going to mean that you have to direct people constantly to somewhere. So you might as well direct them directly to you. So it turns into this weird kind of, well, what are you actually doing other than kind of circling around the drain, waiting to just die and go down? You have to do something, you have to innovate. And I see that a lot in the indie comics community, reaching out directly to the fans and the retailers now too, that are starting to come over and go, okay, I'm really tired of the way things are going. There has to be a better way, a different way. And a lot of retailers are starting to go, well, we want to work with the publishers and the creators that are getting people excited about their books. Because then we can say, we stock this book and we can help promote them and they'll help promote us. Instead of it, this kind of this one-sided promotion. If you look at a lot of the bigger publishers, it's very rare they even mention a specific comic shop, let alone comic shops in general. But if you look at the indie side of it, if indie creators are in stores, that's exciting for them. A lot of these guys, like they'll put themselves into large amounts of debt just to get on the comic shop shelf. It means so much to them. So that's, I think, a big direction that things are going in. And as far as mainstream comics maybe coming around, I can't necessarily see that happening. Big business loves other big business. Big business doesn't really care about if the small business succeeds or not because their business is only going to grow at such a rate. And, it's easier for a Marvel, let's say, to deal with Target or Walmart or whatever, a big national retailer than it is for them to want to deal with 2,000 independent small businesses and try to figure out, well, how do we, meet the needs of every single one? And it's not to say that can't be done, but obviously they're in a different position now where they go, well, we could probably stop making comics today and still be making billions of dollars anyway on like wrapping paper of Spider-Man or Batman or whoever.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that before, too, having done some work with Disney ourselves. Like, we made some contacts over there. We talked to people and we have a very, I think, a pretty good understanding of where comic books rank with the Walt Disney Company. And it's not very high. And, people keep thinking, oh, it could never happen. Disney would never pull the plug on Marvel Comics as a comic book publisher. And I'm like, well, they're kind of scrounging between the couch cushions now. They're making some cutbacks. They way overpaid for Fox. They've got this streaming service that's already got them $1 billion plus in the hole. They've cut loose profitable business divisions. They've cut loose some of their in-house game developers. They dropped Disney Infinity like a rock when it was number one selling toys to life.
Was shocking.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah, we're done, we're out, because we don't see a future for it. And that's how Disney thinks. Like, people don't realize Disney's not planning their next move. They're thinking 10 moves ahead.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They're going to look at the market in 10 years and be like, is there even going to be a market for comic books in 10 years? Or, you know, what we're doing now, the margin's going to be high enough. And if the answer is no, and if they're like, well, we can take the millions of dollars we're pumping into rent and printing and talent, and we can move it over to, you know, making Marvel TV shows, you know, that's what they're gonna do. So
and they can still keep the comics alive because there's, you know, 80 years or so of content. So it's not like they have to have new stuff, because like we've said every time, whenever I talk to new readers or new creators, sometimes I'll get a creator who goes, well, my book has been out for a year. I don't really think that people should, you know, hear about it still. You know, I think they've heard enough. And I'm like, there's someone every day discovering Batman and Beethoven and having a first slice of pizza and all these things. Someone every day is discovering those things for the first time that you would think, well, you'd be almost born with that knowledge, you know? So they don't need to put out new stories or anything like that. It's always going to be new to someone. And there's enough evergreen, very classic, very iconic stories that will continue to sell well for them for forever and ever and ever. So they don't necessarily need to make new content, pay, you know, new creators, manage overhead on that, all that stuff. And it's not necessarily going to be to the detriment of Disney. It'll be to the detriment of the entire comic industry, which is why it's very important right now. Play the same game. You know, retailers, publishers, all of you guys, think 4, 5, 6, 10 moves ahead. You know, this is a chess game right now. You know, pivot and adapt, because the rug's going to get pulled out from under you one day, and you're going to go, but I bet everything on these guys. I thought they'd be around forever. You know, start building up different sections in your store or within your publishing lineup. Start shoring up different spots. Like right now, I'm taking a look during our expansion. I'm like, you know, we're outgrowing our Etsy store. We're outgrowing a physical space. I'm going to have to start getting part-timers on board eventually to help out with fulfillment. All these different things that I have to think about, because not necessarily some of them we necessarily need right this very second, but we'll need them a year from now or 2 years from now. And this is the time to start doing that, because as soon as you start playing, you know, I'm only thinking about what I have to do today and tomorrow. Well, you know, that's a really risky strategy to take. And I think we're finding a lot of people have been doing that strategy for a while, and now it's kind of coming back to haunt them.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of comics creators in general, or just they're not thinking long term. Like, you know, where is the industry going to be? Where's my career going to be? I think for a lot of people working in comics now, it is very much a month-to-month thing. And I think that, you know, the end goal for most of these people is just stay in comics long enough to get a publishing deal or a movie deal and get out. You know, and I think that in some ways that kind of shows through in the work. You know, they're not really committed to staying in comics, you know, unfortunately.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing that's sad too. Comics are being treated like a stepping stone to something bigger and greater, as opposed to people being very passionate about comics, making the best and most iconic comic that they could make, thinking that this story, you know what, this story will last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It'll outlive me. It'll outlive like the next generation of me, you know, that kind of thing. My kids, my grandkids, they're not thinking in terms of, let me try to make the best possible thing, the best comic I can make. They're going, let me just try to get a lot of attention, a lot of exposure, basically get my name elevated. And then I can use that to go and transfer to some other kind of industry and get the hell out of comics. And that's sad. You know, comics is not just this, you know, this one night stand kind of a place. You know, stay a bit and make something great and carve out a niche for yourself here. I don't know when that whole thing took place, but obviously when the comic movies took off, everyone decided, oh, okay, well, that's a springboard, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I think a lot of the newer creators coming in, that pretty much is. I mean, that's kind of the vibe that you know, my wife and I got. You know, when we were working with, you know, some of the people that were working in publishing or whatever, it was all about getting that book deal, getting those movie rights sold, and getting out of comics. It was kind of like, well, we'll slum it in comics for a while, and then we'll move on to animation, we'll move on to movies, something with a long-term future. And it is really sad because, when people aren't committed to staying long-term, then they're not going to do the best they can do. They're not going to do what's best for the industry, because it's like, well, I'm just passing through. I'm a renter. I'm a transient. I'm not actually buying a house here. And but speaking of the misses, she said earlier, and this is one thing too I want to talk about, and this might explain why we're not seeing a lot of new creations because of this kind of transient mentality. She says, I think a lot of people just want new. If you're going to reboot or use an established IP, it better be similar enough for the fandom. But we're not getting a lot of new, are we? I mean, we're really not. We're getting, we talked about IDW, and they just basically, got into this habit of just, doing licensed books. We look at Marvel, and very seldom do they create new characters, and it really has come down to independent publishers, small press, to give people new characters.
Yeah, and a lot of that is probably like if you work for a publisher who's not going to necessarily give you any kind of ownership on your character, any kind of control. You feel like I've got no skin in the game, so why should I bring my best? I'm just going to go through the motions, do what they tell me to do. I'm just going to, if they tell me, here, take this character that's established and just tweak it and just do whatever. And we're going to go with this. And that's how editorial wants to play things. They're going to go, okay, I don't really care. Because I'm not going to take my awesome, fantastic, amazing character and put him into your company where I lose all control and ownership of it. I mean, that's basically the reason Image was formed.
Yeah.
So you get people going more towards that creator-owned route. And instead of those companies utilizing some kind of creator-owned division in themselves, and I know DC had Vertigo, but that, man, oh man, I don't even want to get started with what happened with Vertigo on this recent.
Yeah.
So, instead of those companies going, hey, let's compete by starting our own creator-owned imprints, they go, you know what, let's fill the shelves so that these creator-owned companies can't succeed, so that they don't make the next Ninja Turtles, they don't make the next Walking Dead. They don't have that chance to grow. It forces the hand of the retailer. What do I stock? Do I stock a book, even though it's, the 15th version of, this character or whatever? Do I stock that? Or do I stock an Alterna book that maybe people don't know about? And the thing is that, that seems like it makes sense. That gamble makes sense, but it's not playing out. And I think more and more now we're getting retailers that realize, I don't think that was a good strategy for us. And we got to go with, instead, boosting up what looks like a quality book, what looks like, I think I can sell this easier. Like Alterna books from retailers all the time. I'll get messages from them about how easy our books are as an add-on sale that instantly turn into a customer putting all of our books on their pull list. Every single time they walk in there, they're like $1.50. And they're like, okay, they're coming out with 5 or 6 a month. We're talking about maybe $10 or less I'm spending on these comics. It's hard to argue, and especially when they look at them and then they go, I like them, these are good. So it's not even just, oh, they're cheap and whatever else, and then you take them home and you read them and you love them. That's when it becomes, well, I'm just going to read Alterna. So we got a lot of people that have converted, or they were thinking of, and this has been great. I love these stories. When comic shops tell me, we had a customer that was fed up with all the other publishers, came in the store, and they wanted to drop all the comics from their pull list. And we offered them yours as kind of like a last-ditch effort. If you like horror, if you like sci-fi, if you like superheroes, maybe try this title out, try that title out, from these guys, Alterna. And then they're like, okay, fine. They begrudgingly do so. And then they become a customer at the comic shop still, and they keep their pull list open with all of the Alterna books. So at least there's not a customer that's lost fully and completely, not only from the comic shop, but from comics in general. And I love the stories like that. That stuff is great. And so when I hear stuff like that from shops and from customers too, I know we're doing something good, and obviously we're expanding. And I hate to say it like this, but it's crazy that we're expanding while at a time when the industry is contracting. And maybe an affordable lineup, maybe we're doing newsprint. It enables us to put books out at such a cheap amount too. Like that's one of the things that helps. look into that. Look into having something that's like that, some kind of an economy line, even if you don't want to do your whole publishing line like that. I think it's something that every publisher needs to take into account. This is a good way to at least get a consumer, and not outprice them from becoming a reader, because $5 an issue, which is what we're approaching as an average, is absurd.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember, when I first started reading comics as a kid, they were, just to date me, I think the very first comic books I bought were 60 cents for Marvel, 75. Then they went up to 75 cents. Most of the comics I bought when I was a kid, 75 cents to $1.25. And for, my lawn mowing money, I could pick up pretty much everything Marvel put out in a month.
And even with inflation, it's still cheaper than the average comic today. So when people say things like, "Oh, well, there's inflation and there's, everything is more expensive," it's like, okay, well, I hate the argument, first of all, that everything is more expensive, because the first computer I ever bought is about 5 times the amount of the one I have today.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So not everything was just, prices just always increase. That's not true. And when it comes to stuff like paper, obviously, yes, costs rise. When it comes to cost of living, costs rise. But the thing is comics are sold by volume. We're supposed to be selling a lot of these things, not just one,
Yeah.
So we have to look into that. We have to look into getting comics into more places. When comics were at their height, they were everywhere. You couldn't go to some place without bumping into a comic. Maybe not all of them, but definitely some of them. Now it's rare. It's rare to see a comic that's not, if you just go to the comic shop. It's rare to see that anywhere else.
Yeah, and I remember being shocked, when I was a kid, and like Now comics were like $1.75, and the only real difference with the Now comics were they had better paper. They had nicer paper, but I'm like, it didn't make me enjoy the comic anymore. I mean, it looked nice, but I read it and put it in the bag, and I was done with it.
Yeah.
So okay, let's talk about what kind of, have you been getting any feedback from other publishers at all, Peter? Are you kind of out like on an island on your own here?
I think I got a lot of feedback back in August and September.
Yeah, well, okay. I wasn't gonna quite go there, but
I think I got all the feedback I need from the industry.
Right. Do you think? I mean, look, just this is my armchair observation. It seems like a lot of the drama, at least in the last couple of months, seems like it's sort of like dying down. Do you think that these blogs and the industry pundits, do you think they're getting tired of fighting people who are coming up with better ideas than they have?
Maybe it's an analytics thing. Maybe it's not getting them the same clicks it used to get. Maybe it's a lot of people I notice a lot of people are ignoring a lot of different things. I'm certainly ignoring it. I after what occurred to me in February, I pretty much made it a policy to myself to be like, you know what? Anyone that comes at me with anything crazy to say, which is quite often, just don't engage them, because it's not worth it. It wastes my time, it wastes my my emotion, my energy. And it prevents me from doing all the things I need to do that are enabling us to expand. So I don't know if it could be a combination of everything, but I think there's a lot going on in the industry that wasn't necessarily giving anyone the big W that they can kind of spike the football and be like, hey, look at this. And you said all these things and it's doing great. I think if anything, it's been something no one wants to talk about, which is also bad too, because these are problems that need to be addressed. I think I have a lot of, I think I've received a lot of feedback from people that are not so pleased with what we're doing, but they've addressed it in different ways.
Right. Well, I guess I was wondering, did you have any publishers actually pull you aside and say, "Hey, that's a really good idea. I've had a handful of creators and publishers that are definitely like-minded and are on the same wavelength as me, with what's going on in the industry, with what needs to occur, with the fact that comics need to be more affordable, they need to be in more places. Yeah. So I definitely have had people who I would consider friendly, that kind of stuff.
but it does seem to be that it's not really a popular conversation to have to address making those kinds of changes. I think for the most part, people look at that and they go, well, I've been saying for so long that we're doing the right thing. So now to come out and say we have to make a change, even if I don't say that what we're doing is failing or what we're doing is wrong, it looks like an admission of guilt. It looks like we did mess up at some point and we have to change the course.
Right.
And I think that at this point, even though they shouldn't take it this way, I think that for a lot of people that is a fate worse than failure. To admit I was wrong, we screwed up, we have to do something different. Even though, if anything, I honestly think that the fans and the retailers would rejoice. I think they'd be like, "Oh, this is fantastic! Finally, we get to see some kind of positive shift." But instead, it's like you double down, you keep continuing, you keep going down the course of the way it's going, and you expect different results. I think there's a definition of insanity for that. So and that seems like that's what's going on. It seems like people are really choosing to instead of swallow your pride a bit and go, we have to reconsider what we've been doing, and we have to listen to what the fans want and what the retailers want, because without them we've got nothing. And instead of doing that, and it doesn't mean you have to do everything they ask, because it's not possible. But you're going to always notice that there's an overwhelming majority of people that are going to say certain things. And then that's when you take into account, okay, does it correlate with the way our sales are going? Does it correlate with what we're seeing from everybody, from the mass of people? Because, basically, your customers are people that are saying, all I could think is if you go to a store and you really wanted to get, we'll say you wanted to get peanut butter, and your favorite peanut butter is out and they don't have it. And you're like, why don't they have it? And then you find out the store dropped that peanut butter. And then you go to the manager and you're like, can you guys get this peanut butter in because I want to buy it? And they go, no, we just don't want to get it in anymore. just cause. And you're like, but I have money. I want to give you money. I want to give you this money if you get this product in your store. And they're like, yeah, I know you do, but we just don't care. That's like the comic industry right now. It's these millions of people that are basically all just sitting there going, we have this money for comics and things that you make and you sell. If you just made these, I give you this money I have. And they're like, nah, we don't want it. And the thing is, if they were all doing great, you could say, okay, fine. They have a point. But when they're struggling, why are you so stubbornly saying, no, I don't want your money. I don't want your business. I'd rather lose my business than even consider taking your money and doing the thing of why I started this business to begin with, which was to make money. It's baffling, but that's what's occurring all the time in the comic industry.
Oh, God. Speaking of money, we have a super chat from Mark C. Thank you. Did not have to do that. He wants to know, why don't major publishers sell ad space for revenue to offset printing costs?
Last I checked, they do, though. Don't they sell ad space in the big two?
I think they still do that. They don't sell as many ads.
Oh,
and
I think definitely not as many.
No, and again, going back to when I was a kid, you always had the Olympic greeting cards and the sea monkeys and the Hostess ad, which were better than some of the comics I read.
And the Charleston shoes.
Bonkers can't. Nintendo games, lots of Nintendo games. And I think it's, at least from where I'm at, I think it's circulation. I think the numbers aren't there. So it doesn't make sense for a big ad agency to do an ad buy if they're only going to reach 10,000 people.
Well, I mean, but we sell ad space all the time. Like, for instance, let me get one that has Ultra Pro on the back of it. Here we go. So the wonderful people at Ultra Pro actually were psyched to do ads with us because they were saying we finally can get some ad space going at a comic publisher. Because they had missed it. And I was psyched because I used Ultra Pro since I was a kid, so that was great. And then we also have ads for BCW in a bunch of the books. And we sell ads to independent creators too, and to local comic shops. And we give discounted ads to our creators if they want to advertise their own books. We give a pretty steep discount too. So, I don't know why they choose not to do stuff like that, because to be quite honest, I've even thought for the longest time right now, depending on how the comic industry was to go, I could potentially look into, when you see outside of stores and they've got the setup where they've got like a free auto magazine or a free realtor magazine, and
Yeah.
you can look up all the real estate listings. Yeah, you can do that. You can put comics there. And you can just have this massive circulation, even locally would be like something like 50, 60,000, and let local businesses know. And even if you filled half the damn thing with ads, it could still be a free comic for people, and you would make money probably make more money off of the advertising than you would through traditional comic distribution. So that's one of those, like, if all else fails, the industry completely crumbles. That's something I'll pursue. But it's like, anything else, you can definitely utilize ad space. You just have to, like, I don't think it'd be worth going through an ad agency, but Marvel and DC certainly have the clout to be able to sell that ad space. Whether they have their own in-house advertising teams, I don't know. But yeah, they could not only offset the print costs, they can offset the creator costs too for the amount that they put out there. We don't put out that much, for everyone. Our print runs are usually between 3,000 to 6,000 a book. To Diamond, maybe about 2,000 or so sell through. And we sell all the rest direct or on newsstand as well. So it's not like we have these astronomical print runs, and that's why we're getting advertiser interest. It's just our ad prices are good. Like the back cover is only like $200. You can get a quarter pager for $25. So if someone's interested in even putting, a happy birthday message to someone in a comic book, you can do it for $25 in an Alterna book. So it's that kind of stuff that you just have to be creative with it. And I don't know what's going on, but it's certainly not helping things.
Serenity Joy, thank you. Didn't have to do that. $1. Mark C is back again. Well, he's going to bankroll this episode tonight. He says all ads for the big two are either house ads or ads for their parent companies. Actually, that seems to be the case. I've been picking up the DC 100-page Giants, and I was actually surprised. $5 book, very few ads, and they were all ads for the other 100-page Giants or graphic novels. Is really kind of crazy, because I expected, for $5, it would be littered with ads, and it just wasn't.
Yeah. And and there goes the what I was talking about with reprinted material, that they could put that out for forever, essentially. Most of the things reprint. They don't even have to put a new story, and they could still sell what they're selling on it. With that though, it's a bit weird. Like, for instance, I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned it on your show, but Target was interested in having Alterna books in their stores.
Okay.
But they wanted us to do, and this is smart. This is right of them. They wanted us to do a promotional placement, so it would be at the registers. And that's good. That's fine. But it costs a lot. It's like $2,000 something a month. And then they still take like 50% of the sale, and you can basically sell through what they wanted to order from us, and we would just break even. And that's if it all sold through, which it probably wouldn't. Probably only sell like 30 or 40% of it.
Right.
But if I was, I had some big two money, yeah, I'm jumping at that tomorrow, because that's just to get the loss leader exposure to grow the properties, because at Alterna too, it's creator owned. So I don't have, like, personally, I don't have an incentive necessarily, or even the legal right to merchandise these creators' characters, their books, all that kind of stuff. Get film rights. If the creators get a film, if they get a T-shirt, if they make a sticker, they keep all of that. And I'll just make more books if it gets popular through those means. So if I was the big two though, and I had all these characters and all these IPs and everything else, like, yeah, I would totally, that's $2,000 and books well invested to get all these eyes in front of these properties, in front of these characters. So I would jump at it, because, even when we had our Toys R Us deal, it was very cheap. It was something like, I think like $300 a month for the promotional placement to get in the top 200 Toys R Us stores. And we sold, I think, like half of what they did. So we basically broke even on it. But we ended up getting about at least about maybe 50 to 60 customers that told me directly they found our books through there, and continue to this day to get Alterna books because they found them at Toys R Us. And the funniest part is most of those customers then went to their local comic shop and they said, I found these books at Toys R Us. Do you guys have any of these? I want to get them. And then they became comic shop customers. So there goes, the whole fallacy of if you put these comics in other places, that they won't go to the comic shop anymore. They'll just go to the chain store.
Yeah, well, that happened to me because actually the first comics I picked up were the packs of Whitman reprint comics, right? They were DCs and Superman, and then later on I picked up the G.I. Joe Transformer comics and the 3-pack or 4-pack, whatever they were. They were the leftover comics, and they had the direct market, the Spider-Man face where the UPC symbol should be. Yeah. And I would get hooked on, I'd get a miniseries and I'd get 2 issues of a 4-issue miniseries, and then I wound up having to go to the comic shop to track down the other 2 issues. So it did work for me because that's how I got started reading comic books. And then I'm like, wow, there's more out there, and I'd go to the comic shops and I'd pick up the issues I was missing. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And Grim Ray Play, thank you. Didn't have to do that. Streamly reminder to be like a clownfish and stay hydrated, eat vegetables, and remember to never stop being your amazing self. We love all you do. Thank you very much for the support. I am staying hydrated. I'm drinking water instead of alcohol tonight. So
yeah, you gotta keep up with me.
Yeah.
Right. No drunk neon.
No, nobody wants that. Geeky might like that. She might like that on occasion, but she is in the chat. She's there talking. I don't know what.
Hey, Geeky.
She is in there, but nope. She put a little heart there. Okay. But yeah, all let's talk about comics and stuff. I mean, we've been going back and forth. We self-published before. And we said before that we just kind of walked away from the comic book industry because we didn't see it. We didn't see a future. Yeah, we're just and we were actually doing pretty good. We did Baltimore. Gosh, it's probably been 5 years now. And we sold out of everything. I mean, we sold if it wasn't freaking nailed down to the table, we sold out of our runs of books. But we were just we kind of looked at the way things were going with the comic book industry before there was any sort of comics gate or any kind of nefarious, stuff going on. And we were just I don't know if there's a future here, yeah. But it's always good, to talk to you, Peter, from Alterna, because, looking at Alterna and looking at some of the stuff going on with all the crowdfunding, and that there are options. If you still want to make comic books, there are options, and you can actually be financially successful at it too, and people were like, well, I can make comics, but I'm not going to make any money. I'm like, well, if you think like that, you're probably not, because you're not going to be thinking like a business person. And, you've already shot yourself in the foot. Yeah.
That's the thing is it's like any other business for the most part, but comics more so. It's more a numbers game than anything, so you can be this amazingly talented comic creator. And let's say your reach is only 100 people. Or you can be someone who's pretty mediocre, possibly even bad. And your reach could be 100,000 people.
Yeah.
That person who's insanely talented with just the 100 reach is going to just quit comics in a year because they're going to get frustrated. They're going to go, I'm not making a living on this. This is really difficult, and that person then who's not so good at all is going to have a really great living, because their reach is that much bigger. So the key to it is definitely to network, get your stuff out there, get eyes on your stuff. Make sure that people are aware of what you're doing, that they are aware of you as well. A lot of this stuff too with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a great answer, but it's not the answer, and especially if you don't have a crowd to help fund you.
Right.
Reconsider crowdfunding. Build that crowd first, and then get the crowd to fund you. Don't go in there. I see it all the time. People will have no network whatsoever. They'll just come on the scene, and they're not ready in a couple other ways too. But they're absolutely not ready in this way of having people that pay attention to what they're doing. And they're kind of counting on that lightning in a bottle thing, and that happens once in a while. But it doesn't really happen the whole time. So you get everybody that jumps at that, and then they think, oh man, my comic will be funded and it'll be great, and everyone will discover me through there. Not the case at all. You got to have all these systems in place, all these people you've talked to, all this other stuff, at your disposal, and then you can go towards crowdfunding. But yeah, so There's a lot of answers right now, but they all still take work, and I find
Mhm.
that that's the biggest common denominator with a lot of people is that they don't necessarily want to put in the work. Um, it's always what's the magic secret, they go
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they look at Alterna's booming, Alterna's growing, what's your secret? And I'm like, 12 years of working thousands upon thousands of hours, and then a little bit of luck. That's it. That's the secret. And then they
Yeah.
don't want to hear that.
No, that's just nobody. And I think that's why so attractive. Like I'm gonna go work for Marvel, go work for DC, and then I'm gonna jump into the movies because it's sort of like I don't know. I think they think it's easy. I think they really think it's easy.
Yeah, I think they think it's like the one little thing, and then they'll be big.
Right, right. Johnny Perry, thank you. Did not have to do that. When a comic is made a passion, the money can come when people connect to your story. People need to find that connection again. And I think people aren't really connecting to a lot of comics anymore because I mean, in some ways they feel, again just talking about those transient people working in comics, it sort of feels like comics are more of a product now than they've ever been. Even though we have so many editors and creatives being like, no, this is high art. It actually does feel. In many ways, like it's more of an assembly line now. Just slap together, 4 or 5 Spider-Man books, and get them out the door.
Yep, yep. Like everything else, it's cliche, but quality over quantity. The comic industry should really learn from that, and I think we'd see a lot more success from it. If anything, if I was one of these other publishers, I wouldn't want to see, okay, we've got X amount of sales spread out over 10 or 12 books. I'd want to see the 1 or 2 books having 200,000 or 300,000 sales.
Yeah.
That and know we're giving quality every time, and that people are reading this and they're like, this is fantastic, and they're getting excited about it, and they're buying the merchandise, and they're buying everything else associated with it, and they're getting psyched for the movies and the shows and everything else, and that's the way to go about it. The whole thing of just kind of throwing the spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks,
Yeah.
it can only work for so long. And the thing is, what's weird though is that when the noodle sticks on the wall, they still just go, I'm still throwing more spaghetti. I'm not going to stick with just that noodle that's there and is taken off and doing well, and make sure I double down on that. They're still acting as if we don't know what works. Like, I don't think they understand. Comics have become a mainstream product. So if you're in the mainstream with any kind of product, whenever you hear a company go, they're rebooting their line, they're resetting everything, they're going back to formula, essentially.
Yeah.
You think, oh, it's because the other one didn't work. Oh, it's because no one likes the other one. Oh, it's because the other one's bad. So if you're a non-comic consumer and you constantly hear they're rebooting, they're retconning things constantly, you think, oh, comics must be in a really bad place. I don't think I want to get into comics. And then if you start thinking that as a consumer, there's sure as hell creators out there that are going to think the same thing. And before we lose readers, because we're going to lose creators in comics before we lose readers.
Yeah.
And then we're going to lose comics, period. So, it's a multifaceted problem that has a lot of different ripples and a lot of different layers to it. And everyone's always concerned about losing readers. I'm concerned about losing creators that make the damn things. We need that next generation of kids that's like drawing all day long in class instead of paying attention, like I was.
Yeah.
I still did well in school. I don't know how. I must have been absorbing it through osmosis or whatever. But, you still need these kids that are doodling all day. And then by, 16, 17, they're making stuff that looks phenomenal. And they're used to just drawing for 8 hours a day because that's what they've been doing. And they have a passion for it and a love for it. We need that generation. And instead they're like, oh, well, the movies will bring those kids. No, the movies will make those kids turn into actors and directors and screenwriters and storyboard artists. And especially when they see the money differential. Yeah, that's what that's going to do. So we need the comics that reach that audience, because kids, I was a substitute teacher for like 5 years, and kids, especially elementary school age kids, want to read all the time. We couldn't get work half the time done in the class because they want to take their favorite book and read it to Mr. Simeti, because they're so excited. They're so proud. They want to read, and kids love reading. And not every kid obviously loves reading, but most kids love it. It's new to them. It's something that's exciting. So you gotta let kids know that comics are still great when they're excited about reading, and then it gets them excited in different, going on different paths to start creating and drawing, because kids love drawing and reading. That's like their two favorite things in the world for like 4 years. So if you don't introduce comics to kids at that age and get them falling in love with it, you can't start this whole trend of the 35-year-old who makes bank doing advertising and graphic design and say, hey, this guy's good. You want to do some comics and make like 10th of the money you're making right now?
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. And this industry keeps doing that. We keep pulling into other industries that are more successful and saying, hey, we'll give you like a 10th of the money that you're making now. You want to make some comic books? And then we're wondering, well, why don't they want to stick around? And like we said before, all you need is one exec at a big company that comes in, has no love for comics, no nostalgia, doesn't give a crap about Stan Lee, doesn't care about Excelsior, doesn't care about any of that stuff. Comes in, looks at the spreadsheet and says, you know what? Like we didn't do any money on these. We didn't make anything. We're losing like crazy. End it.
Yeah.
Let it. And that's it. Boom. Done.
Yeah.
And we're years away from that.
Yeah, I think within the next 5 years, somebody's going to blink. It's either going to be Disney or Warner Brothers, and they're going to be like, this makes no sense financially. It means nothing to me personally. We don't, it's just, why are we doing this? What, to make 100,000 people happy, comic book shop, it's, and that terrifies me. It terrifies me, but it could happen very soon. Jesse N, thank you, didn't have to do that, says, sup Pete.
Oh yeah, Jesse's always in the Alterna Comics live chats, giving me a super chat saying "Sup, Pete." Hey Jesse, how's it going? That's our thing.
Awesome. Geeky says elementary was her favorite to work with. She's actually a teacher. She's taught.
Awesome.
Yeah, elementary kids, they're so optimistic, and then the real world happens. Mark C, thank you, didn't have to do that. I bought the Alterna Halloween pack, lots of issue 2s and 3s of miniseries for the issues. I want to fill out the series for the kids. Can you help?
Yeah, well, you can go to we actually on the Indiegogo right now. It's very similar to Alternaween. If you want to get specific issues, you can go to orderalterna.com. If you want to just partake in what we've got going on right now on Indiegogo, you can actually get another pack similarly discounted to what we had during Alternaween. It's kind of got like a free comic book day feel to it, where we encourage people to donate the extras. But yeah, you can go there as well and support if you'd like. But if you need specific issues, you can go to orderalterna.com. Some of the stuff we might be sold out on and might be out of print completely, but we should have most of it there.
Awesome. So let me give people the link to your Indiegogo here again, because we have a lot of people coming in, and that is again to help Alterna expand, get a bigger space to store all these books that they're printing, because things are booming, and that's good. That's very good to hear that a comic book publisher is doing well in 2019.
Yeah, I know. As crazy as it is to say, it is funny to say. It's sad too, but it is funny.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I think a lot of it's attitude. We look at, a lot of people who are working in comics now, and either they don't really like comics, they're not business savvy. You go out to Twitter and it's freaking, God, it's depressing. So many miserable people. So many miserable people without filters on Twitter, and you can tell they just don't enjoy what they're doing, so I'm like, then go work in another industry, go do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Just even for them, you get one life as far as I know, and don't waste it being miserable. If comics do certainly make you miserable, be in another industry, do something that makes you happy. And I don't know, so many people really are. It's the wrong attitude, and you got to have the right attitude. I've discussed it before. There's just too much defeatism and delusion in comics. There's too many people that do enter the space and think no matter what they do, no matter how good they get, no matter how long they're doing it, they're never going to succeed, and that's okay. And that's their attitude. Don't have that attitude. That attitude stinks. That attitude is awful, and it's not true at all. If you have a comic if you do anything, honestly, you can apply this too. If you're not succeeding at it, look at what you're doing and honestly assess it and go, is this good? Is this really good? And if you can 100% but truthfully believe, yes, this is good, it's a quality product, and you're still not succeeding, well, then the reason is that not enough people know about it. So then that's where you have to improve. So, you can have a case where maybe you got tons of people knowing about it and you're not succeeding. And then you can say, okay, it's just not a good product. Let's go back. But in comics, it seems to be both. It seems to be the product's okay. And, no one knows about it. So, well, then you got to improve both, concentrate first and foremost, obviously, on the quality. But, a lot of people, they just don't, it's very insular. They just don't think comics can break past the people who already know about comics. And it's such bullshit, because I've done like maybe 24 signings at Barnes and Nobles in the past 5 years, let's say. And people will come up and they'll grab a book, they'll grab The Chair, which is my graphic novel, and it got turned into a film also. It's Roddy Piper's last film before he passed.
Yeah.
So they'll grab that book and they'll think it's just a straight up regular novel, and then they open it up and they go, oh, this is a comic book. And I go, yeah, it's a graphic novel. That's kind of what they're called when they're bound like that. And they go, oh, I didn't know they just still made comics. And I'm like, yeah, they definitely do. And I say, don't you have a local comic shop near you? And most of the time they say, yeah. And they say, but I thought they just had older stuff in there. I didn't think they still made comics. And they're like, because I don't see them anywhere anymore. I don't see them in places. So I figure they don't make any new ones. And every time that person who thought that book was just a novel and was kind of happy to see it was a comic, they buy that comic. So every single time that occurred, every time, it was about maybe 30 different people over the course of doing those signings. And why then is there this it's like a weird, we all have to believe it, right? So it must be true. If we all believe it, it's true, but it's not true. And no matter how many times it happens, no matter how many cases occur of it, where comics break through to the mainstream customer, people still want to believe that comics can't expand their reach, and that they have no place in stores outside of a comic shop. It's such a weird mindset, And then you have the other mindset, which is the delusional mindset, where you think you've made the greatest thing in the world, and you are completely incapable of improving anything that you're doing. And if I don't succeed, it's because everybody else is awful.
Yeah.
So you get that other side of largely what's in comics right now. And both of those sides, defeatism and delusion, are kind of crippling the whole industry from growing the way it needs to grow and the way it could grow. And it's sad to see. So that's why at Alterna, it's great that we're doing what we're doing. And I love the success we're having because of the fact that our creators engage the readers. If we ever get, negative feedback about a book, which is very rare, but if we do get it, we thank them for reading. We thank them for their feedback, and we see, do other people start to have the same comment? Because then if they do, we start to reassess, okay, maybe we have to tell a story differently. Maybe on the next time we tell a story, you cut out that kind of an element. Whatever it is, even if it's something I'm doing as a publisher, there's been a couple different things where I'm thinking, yeah, we probably need to improve on this, but we'll see if the customers are okay with it. And sometimes they are, and I'm glad I didn't make a change. And then sometimes they tell me things that I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to make that change. I thought about that already. So it's valuable feedback to help your business grow. And there's so many people that are just pushing that feedback away. And then instead they just want to sit on what they want to believe, even though the results aren't there. It's very odd. It's very odd as a creator and as a business.
Okay. Let me read a couple more super chats here. We've got Evan Rogers. Thank you. Didn't have to do that. He says the modern comic book industry cares more about what they can influence with comics and not with telling a good story. And he also goes on to say, how was Roddy before Roddy was cool? R.I.P. Before Rowdy was cool. How was Rowdy before Rowdy was cool? Roddy Piper. Yeah, that's sad. That's very sad. I had a chance to see him briefly one of the comic shows we did. I think it was one of his last shows in Pittsburgh, and they had bagpipes playing for him when he came in.
Yeah,
he puts on quite a show.
Yeah, Roddy was fantastic. He was such a nice guy too. I'll always cherish the conversations I had with him. We became like fast friends over the 6 months or so between development, pre-production, and production of the film. And I really thought we would have had some more time, but he passed away about 4 or 5 months after the
Yeah.
film.
Very sad. Very sad. It seems like all of our heroes, from the '80s are dying. It's very very sad. But let me see here. I think we're gonna wrap up here pretty soon. Do you have any final words, maybe, for anybody looking to break into comics now? This is the question we get asked most often here on the channel. Is like, I want to make my own comic book. I want to do comics. What should I do?
Yeah, it depends. I always tell people, try to learn as many things about the industry as you can. Try to develop your skill set as much as possible. Try to take the time to get all of the fundamentals down before you submit to a publisher. You can always self-publish. That's always a possibility. But as soon as you start getting a publisher involved and other creators involved with your projects, make sure that you're bringing something to the table too, and you're not leaning too hard. And if you're an artist, fill up a whole book with drawings. Draw anything and everything. Don't just draw the fun stuff. Don't just draw superheroes and poses. Don't just draw faces. Draw everything you can see, everything you can possibly, the whole room. Look at the room you're around. Try to recreate that. Look at some of your favorite comics. Try to recreate those. Look at anatomy books and study those as well. Develop, your drawing for textures and environments and all that stuff. If you're a writer, I get this a lot too. People they don't want to not just be a writer. They want to be, they want to just do the writing and say, but I'm the writer and that's it. But then they're wondering, how am I going to network with people? How am I going to be of use to a creative team? I just want to be the writer. And it's like, okay, well, learn how to letter, learn editing too, because a lot of writers don't know how to edit, which is a problem as well. Learn even things like how to ink. Learn how to be that person that's Johnny on the spot. This way you can help out any creative team and you can network properly. Instead of, I know there's a lot of networking advice in the industry that basically amounts to kiss this person's ass.
Yeah, right.
That networking sucks. that networking is the worst networking you can do, because it's to anyone with any kind of common sense, you can see that coming 100 miles away, and you develop shallow relationships. You want to develop relationships that have some depth, some meaning. You can help each other out. You want to be of use. And so if you learn all these different things that you can help out on and be there for someone if they need your help, and say, hey, I can do this. I can do a logo. I can help you out with lettering, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You can get more jobs that way. Get on more books, get your name out there, and not only network, but develop your own fan base, your own readership. So it's slow and steady, and you got to do a lot of different things. But man, oh man, like, people that think the key to it is to kind of talk to the right person and schmooze them till they sort of get in their good graces.
Yeah.
And then they're sort of kind of ready to do a job, and then they usually fall flat on their face. And then they ask more favors of the person they were schmoozing to kind of save them. And it gets weird, and it turns the whole industry weird. It makes a book weird. It's like tasting food from a chef who doesn't really know what the hell they're doing. It's totally different than eating food from someone that's like, yeah, I took the time and the care, and I made this thing good, and you're gonna enjoy it. Whereas this other person's like, I just rushed it all together, and I'm only here because I'm friends with the wife of the manager of the restaurant. So don't do that. The whole weird nepotism thing that can exist in entertainment industries in general. I'm not a fan of that. You can see why everybody loves me so much, and why they said such wonderful things a couple months ago.
Well, Gordon Ramsay would spit that shit out. And
yeah,
he'd have words for those people and be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
But I love the networking where someone can go, "Hey, I know how to do all these things. I can help out. and I want to help out, than the networking where it's like, hey man, hey, I got a book. You want to publish it? You want to publish it? You want to publish it? It's like, okay, yeah, submit it. So don't just tell me, and I'm accessible on social media, but don't just tell me you have a book. You and about 3,000 other people, every year tell me they have a book that they want me to publish, but you have to submit it. You have to go through the right avenues, and you also then, network again the right way. Don't just network by telling me how awesome you think Alterna is or whatever. Because I've been doing this long enough, I can see through the shallow praise when it comes to that. I can tell when someone when sometimes they'll send a submission through and they'll tell me how many Alterna books they've read, but they don't name any. And then they also send in a submission that looks like something we would never in a million years ever publish. And then I go, okay, what was your favorite Alterna book? And they don't ever really have a response. It's usually something, oh, I like the horror ones you do.
My own book that you're going to publish. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's always a good one too.
How much are you going to pay me for that? You're going to give me a lot of money for that, right?
Yeah, and I do like a certain sense of bravado. Like, that's great. But you still have to be. Don't bullshit me into a job and then think I'm going to hire you or sign your book on. Let's just be open and honest with each other. You don't need to be too. And I think they do that because that's how other people like to run their businesses sometimes.
Yeah.
If you come to Alterna, just make sure, work on your stuff, take your time, and don't rush it. I always tell people, don't rush into it. People are they're so eager to get published that they don't even care who publishes it, as long as someone publishes it. Your book is your baby. Make sure that you're dropping your baby off with someone that's going to take care of it and someone who's going to do right by it. You don't want to come back and all of a sudden your baby's dead and you're like, oh, well, what's going on here?
Oh God.
It's like, well, you just left your baby, which is your story, with someone that, like, you just didn't care who you left it with.
Just good. But on care.com. And,
yeah,
Oh my God.
So do some research. Make sure the publisher is right for you too. But yeah, take your time, put in the time, and do the work. There's no shortcuts, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, let me read a couple super chats here, Peter, and then we'll send people over to your Indiegogo one last time for tonight. Jesse N, $2. Thank you. Didn't have to do that. I always get my $1.50, $1.99 worth, no complaints. So he is an Alterna reader. And Evan Rogers again, thank you very much. Ultimate Warrior's death was also sad 24 hours after he appeared on Raw. Yeah, that was surprising. He even gave a speech about a man's heart beating its last. Funny story, quick story about the Ultimate Warrior. I have somewhere a handwritten comic book rejection letter from the Ultimate Warrior. He was doing a comic book back in the late 90s, and I tried out for it. And he didn't like my stuff. Well, actually, he liked my stuff, but he wanted more of like a Rob Liefeld type style, and my stuff was really cartoony. And me being me, I was like, well, why not? Why aren't you letting me draw your comic? So after pestering him repeatedly via AOL, I got a handwritten letter from the Ultimate Warrior. Handwritten, like literally, he just pulled up a piece of notepaper and wrote, and he blow by blow told me exactly what was wrong with my work. And he wished me well, but he's like, you're just not what I'm looking for, and I'm sorry. It's nothing personal. It's just we have a certain look we wanted for this comic, and I appreciate you, contacting me and my editor and my assistant editor and all the other people that you've been harassing for the last, like 6 weeks or whatever. But I have that somewhere.
Is that framed?
No, it's not. I can't find it. I don't know where it is, and people think I'm making it up, but it actually does exist. There is a letter, handwritten letter from the Ultimate Warrior telling me not to quit my day job. Somewhere in comics. But then people are like, oh, it's a lie. He never worked in comics. I'm like, dude, he totally did. Google it. There are Ultimate Warrior comic books out there. And then I was so mad. Like, I saw the comic. I'm like, this dude looks like a Liefeld knockoff. Why didn't he hire me? And I'm like, well, whatever. Anyway, but then I'm like, oh, cool. I got a handwritten letter from the Ultimate Warrior. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
That's
great.
One of many interesting life stories we have. But tell you what, let me send people out your Indiegogo here one last time, Peter. And that ends what, on Tuesday?
Yeah, that ends Tuesday, April 2nd.
Okay, so if you want to help Alterna expand, why are we talking about lamb sauce in the chat? What is going on with lamb
I
sauce?
think they keep talking about maybe Gordon Ramsay or whatever.
Oh my God, the lamb sauce. Yeah, yeah. We need more Gordon Ramsays in comics. I think comics would have gotten to itself into the state that it's in right now if we had more Gordon Ramsays. Sort of telling
Yeah,
people what they don't want to hear, but they need to hear.
like Jim Shooter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, he did his job well. All right, Peter, any parting thoughts? You want to tell people where to find you and find Alterna on social media?
Yeah, you can make sure to give me a follow on Twitter at Peter Simieti and at Alterna Comics. And also, we've got a YouTube channel as well. We try to put something new up every single day. We do a lot of live streams too. We love our readers. We love everybody that comes to check our stuff and wants to say something in the chat too. You can make sure you click subscribe and go to Alterna Comics there with youtube.com/Alterna Comics. And also, you can go to order Alterna.com. If you don't have a local comic shop, you can get stuff from us directly. And if you do want to go to your local comic shop or see if your local comic shop has our books, you can go to alternacomics.com/retailers. And we have a whole list of comic shops there. We also have newsstand distribution too. So we're in about 80% of Books A Millions and about half of Barnes and Noble. Yeah, we got our stuff in a lot of places. Comixology, Amazon, all the usual suspects. But yeah, I always recommend going and supporting your local comic shop when possible. But if it's not possible, you can always order direct from us.
Yeah, they're getting harder to find. They are. So, but that's good to know that you can order directly if need be. So, thank you so much, Peter, for stopping by. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you on and talk about the state of the comic book industry. And thank you, everybody, for coming in tonight. I know we didn't have a whole lot of notice, but we had quite a few people on. Lots of really good questions. Thank you very much, and for the super chats and the kind words.
Yeah, thank you guys in the chat especially, and thank you Neon for having me on. It's always a great time talking with you.
Okay, well, go buy some Alterna Comics, everybody, and we'll talk later. Goodbye.